This is the first of many innovations from GameSir to release in 2026, the Pocket Taco, which is designed to be strapped on your phone and give you inputs that are more reliable than a touchscreen. This device has a couple of things that makes it stand on its own, and of course we'll go over all that and help you figure out if it's worth pre-ordering or backing one. It is not currently available. It should release around March, but they've given me full reins to be able to release a video, which, by the way, they send that unit. That has no impact on my opinions on when you change hands, and they see the video at the same time as you guys. So let's start with the price. This is going for $34.99 on the GameSir website, so you can pre-order, and based off of the website, it says that they'll ship by March 15th. And you can also back one on, I believe, Kickstarter. I'll put the page on the screen. If you were to back it on Kickstarter, you pay a little less, and you're also going to have access to a exclusive color only on that Kickstarter, a purple. Now, as per the Kickstarter, they're also targeting a delivery for March. I'm not too sure why there are two avenues where you can pre-order one, but I think GameSir recognize that they're a big company. They can just give you the straight outlet. But if you like the crowdfunding idea, they're doing both at the same time. I should probably take a couple of notes from GameSir as far as I'm concerned. Bluetooth connection and USB-C charging, so you'll understand this is a wireless with a battery type of controller. We have 62 grams in terms of the weight. It really feels like nothing. I have an actual other one here, and it weighs so little. You have a membrane ABXY button, up to 30 hours of battery life, and a hollow out bottom design, which is going to be very useful to be able to attach to a bunch of different devices. Art with a little chicken that looks like a Game Boy kind of thing, looks cute. A manual, which we'll go over a little later, and your typical GameSir sticker. A USB Type-C to Type-A cable, a lanyard, here you go, which has a little bit of elasticity to it. It comes with this little case, and the lanyard goes on the case. It's gonna hold it up, and so the controller should always stay in the pouch. However, personally, if I was to use that, for example, on my carry bag or something, I would probably look to put a strap over, just because you never know, like a good bounce. It's very snug, but as you can see, it can slip out. I figured some of you guys may wonder, how does it look like in comparison to the M4? And you'll see that in terms of format, it's very similar. The M4 is a little taller, just a little bit, but the Pocket Taco is a little wider. Again, not a whole lot, but it's definitely a little wider. And the Pocket Taco is also technically thicker. Now, to be fair, it is meant to wrap around your phone, and that's going to be the big difference. The idea is very simple. You have your face buttons, membrane. You have your select start, which is also membrane. Feels like literally a traditional like Nintendo and SNES select and start button. Your D-pad that is also membrane feels quite good. You have L1, R1, L2, R2. These are tactile, very, very short travel. USB-C to charge. But if you were wondering, I'll tell you right off, it does work wired on a PC or whatever other device that would be compatible. So if you were trying to use this on your PC connected, you absolutely can. And in fact, you have access to a different mode, which I'll touch base later. But yes, this is something that you can do. And at the bottom, you have a socket. Any GameSir cable that I've tested will fit, but not every USB-C cable. So for example, this one has a larger frame around the connector. It doesn't go through. That's just a hole so that you can charge your phone as you're using it. Otherwise, there's no actual purpose to that. If you look, for example, my iPhone, which I think I dropped because right now I have a little crack. This is a Pro Max, by the way. It's going to give you basically a perfect fit. And I'll probably put a photo with a Pro, or rather the smaller iPhones, so that you guys have an idea of what it looks like. Now, keep in mind, I do have a case, so it gives me a little bit of extra width. But yeah, it's a very, very good fit. Now, if I put Red Magic, this is a Red Magic 10S Pro. This is what it looks like. Again, very, very good fit. And man, does it feel good. But I'll get back to that in a second. And something that, because you have multiple modes, you could technically, I don't see why you'd want to do that, but you could technically fit it on a Switch. And yes, it could work. And so that you see, I guess the name is quite fitting, a Pocket Taco. I'm literally tacoing, if that's a verb, my Switch 2 with it. It's able to withstand the thickness of a Switch 2, so that put things in perspective. Last but not least, and something I'm definitely going to showcase in this video because I think it is another great use case, is with a tablet. So right now this is a Red Magic Astra, and yeah, I could definitely play like that if I so choose. Now let's talk a little bit about the ergonomics. We'll get back to using it and playing games and testing and all that good stuff. Is that only for retro gaming? Well, not quite, because you have a couple of shortcuts. You can change your layout. If you don't want to have B at the bottom and A to the right, as long as you hold mode and the bottommost button for about 3 seconds, it's going to swap your layout. You won't physically see the difference, but the values are going to be swapped. And same thing, you can swap your D-pad to emulate a left stick or to emulate a right stick. And this is going to be my first con. That feature, I was so hoping that it was going to be there, and it is. So I'm super happy about that. My con is very minimal, but it's a con nonetheless. It is that you have to hold the mode and left D-pad for about 5 seconds to change. And this is, in my opinion, a little too long. I feel like 2 to 3 seconds would be more than enough, because this is a shortcut that really the odds of you doing just because is basically impossible to happen. If you're doing that, it's because you're trying to switch to your left stick, to your right stick, or to your D-pad. And you can do that. You can switch to all three. That still limits the kind of game that you're going to be able to play, because even if it was 2 seconds, you wouldn't be able to swap quickly enough on the fly, but just know that this is a feature that's there. Now, talking ergonomic, even as its own, it feels super good. And the fact that it's so light, it has little to no impact on just your weight and your hands in general. Now, does it feel a little bit cramped? Of course, if you were to compare this to a full-size controller, it's not comparable. You can see that my fingers are kind of hugging it behind the thing, and it's kind of holding it. This is basically how I play when I use it, but when I slap a phone on it, it's essentially the same. What is shocking with this layout is how convincing it is at making you feel like you're holding a vertical handheld. You have access to your shoulder buttons. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention, there's also another shortcut to swap L1 with L2 and R1 with R2. And I'm glad that they put this, because indeed the R2 and L2 are a little far, and the travel distance is so little. It's not at a different height. They're not necessarily, or I guess they are like just so very slightly. I guess you can see by the shadow here. But basically, they feel about the same height. The nuance is way too small to make it feel as if it's taller. But the chances are you won't really play things with this controller that you'll need those buttons, which is also reassuring, because they're not the best to push. Beyond that, the ergonomics, again, is quite shocking. It's curved pretty much all around. Doesn't sink in your palm and kind of hurts after a while. It feels good as you're using this little controller, and it really sends home, at least for me, it really sends home the retro experience that this is built for. And make no mistakes, versus any other similar solution that I've tried, if I'm talking retro gaming, this beats by far the Game Baby case. This also beats the 8BitDo, which I thought was an ideal solution. The big difference being that this is just more comfortable as a whole. And because we are focusing on less buttons, this is also more comfortable to use versus the M4. But of course, the M4 will retain the sticks. So as far as buttons go, you have more features with the M4. Of course, the sticks don't click. These are the only two buttons really that you're missing, is L3 and R3 for everything. And there's supposed to be a shortcut on the release to have those buttons. But for everything else, you have them. So this is something that could be lacking, because indeed, swapping is just, it's not viable to be able to operate both a left stick and a right stick at the same time. Like, it's not fast enough like that. And as far as I can tell, the app right now doesn't allow you to remap. For example, if you wanted to remap L2 to right stick left and R2 to right stick right to control your cameras, as an example. Again, that would be very wild a way to use this. Right now, as far as I can tell, the app doesn't let you do that. When talking modes, you have 5 modes technically. The first mode is whenever you hold A and home, 3 lights are gonna open. This is the PS mode. So this would work for PS Remote Play, for example. This will be perceived as a PlayStation controller for the device that you're connecting. And this will work on iOS, this will work on Android, this will work on PC. Any device that can accept a PS controller, you'll be able to connect that, except Sony's very own consoles. If you hold X and you do the home button, you'll see the LEDs moving. That is the switch mode. And by the way, if you're already connected to a device before, you'll see that it won't put in pairing. The way to do that is you want to hold mode and home, and you'll notice that it will start flicking faster. That means that you are now in pairing mode, and that goes for any mode that you do. The other mode that we'll look into is when you hold B and home, and now you're going to have two LEDs. This is an Android HID mode. So this is going to be for mainly older Android games that do not support the more modern and common protocols. If you're trying to play an old Android game that needs Android HID, you'll find it here. When you do Y and home, you'll have, I believe, all four lights. Yes. And this is your G-Touch. The G-Touch is for screen mapping. This is only for Android. This doesn't work on iOS. Now, I said 5 modes, and I mentioned that you can connect this to your PC. If you were to connect this using a cable, as is very typical with almost every GameSir controller, you can swap your modes by holding Select Start, and this is no exception here. So you'll have 3 modes. The best way to see what mode you're on is to use Gamepad Tester on a website, and it'll tell you. You have the PS mode, the Switch Pro controller mode, and the X input mode. And that one is only accessible when on PC connected through a wire. You cannot get that mode wirelessly. You will only be able to achieve that when being wired. To be fair, I don't think it's really that important for what this controller is designed for. However, if you're interested in finding out if it's a thing, it is a thing. Technically, if you were to run a small cable from here into the socket at the bottom, so USB-C on both sides, on an Android device, you could achieve X input as long as it is wired. Something that potentially could be useful for a couple of people. Let's have a quick look at software. I'm connected with Bluetooth Low Energy, so technically it's still trying to pair with the device, but I could make adjustments on the app. And you'll notice that the app is being resized, and this is something that you can do right here where it says screen ratio. And just to show you guys what it does, it changes the size of the app so that you can use it even though you have your controller on your phone. Keep in mind, this is only going to be useful for the app itself. It's not going to magically keep your operating system with only that size if you were to leave. However, there are some phones, I don't believe this is possible on iPhones, but on Android, you have a lot of phones that can resize windows, and as long as you can do that, you should be able to achieve that as well. Controller testing, right now, it doesn't work because it's on the Android mode on iOS, so iOS doesn't let it through. That's why we don't have controller testing, but I would assume in the future that it's going to work. There's going to be a firmware upgrade. The other one I upgraded. Right now, they're in beta, so just little things that are not really important. Of course, if there are some changes, it'll only get better from here. So they're keeping it super duper simple. I'm going to connect using Switch mode because for some reason, the Switch mode has performed better for me on iOS. On Android, they're all good, but on iOS specifically, the Switch mode is the one that has been the most reliable. I'm going to use that. Clef from the future, I'm going to put latency numbers up. There's 2 things I want to address. Number 1 is, I think because the Taco is such a small device, there is a potential that the numbers are not as good as they should be because of the distance and interference. Number 2, spoofing on iOS is very inconsistent. It did feel a little bit better when I was on Android, but the numbers you're seeing, especially for iOS, that's essentially how it felt. So the Taco on iOS, you definitely want to use it on the Switch mode. And for Android in general, I found that the Android mode was the best one. That may differ on your use case, may differ on the devices. I just thought I'd put it out there and not make this whole numbers crunching. And I think also it's not the device for that, but I know some of you will ask for the numbers, so I ran them. Hopefully that helps. This is what it looks like, and just like that, I have a vertical handheld. And boy, let me tell you, this feels so good. It is. This is the Game Boy Advance version, by the way. So that's why I'm not pushing these buttons, because in the emulator it's select and start. But yeah, this feels so dang good. It is wild how pleasant this is for emulation and just retro gaming in general. You have responsive buttons, you have nice ergonomics, specifically because of that bump in the back. It makes holding it so comfortable and so natural. Just like if you had, you know, some place to rest your fingers, and then if you need the buttons, they're there as well. And I just like putting my 2 pinky fingers at the bottom here to sort of stabilize everything, and it just feels amazing. It plays great, and really, because the controller weighs nothing, this is the best option to just have with you at all times. What I like with this is you can play just anything that is retro. You could play a fighter, you could play a shmup, you could play a platformer because you have responsive buttons. And yes, you could play Pokemon, you know, something like the Game Baby for Pokemon. It's decent enough, but it's really just about the only thing that it's going to do well, like JRPGs. That's about it. Anything that requires response time or be quick on your buttons was just terrible with that option. Here, it's good. You have amazing feeling buttons and it just holds great. I know I sound like I'm super shilling, but I can't stress this enough. It feels so good. By the way, you have anti-scratch material, like little rubber material, so there's no risk that it's going to scratch your screen. I will say, when you have the controller on your phone, the responsiveness of the touchscreen seems to be fine, but it seems to lose a little bit of precision. Here's something wild I want to show you guys. And for the record, right now I'm using GameSir's Android app, Android emulator. I don't know how many systems this is going to emulate. There's really not a whole lot I know about this, so you know, I'll show you real quick. What's fun with this one is that it will, whatever emulate system that you're emulating, it will default to the upper screen. Now, specifically, you don't have to have this big space. You know, I could have big screens as well, but because Sonic, I like that it accounts for the space that is in between the screens. Yo, this is so cool. This is so freaking cool. That's the thing with Sonic. It's too jarring. Having that, it messes with my brain. That's why, like, I need to have that distance. But look, if you don't care for it and you wanted it that way, you can absolutely do it that way. The emulator allows you to basically set it the way you see fit. Wrong Sonic game. So that was one of the ways that you could play this. I also made a setup for the 3DS, which I think because we have that much more screen estate, it looks much better. Obviously for 3DS, you won't be able to play all the games. Some will definitely be harder than others. But nonetheless, I appreciate it. So the Taco is an easy recommend because it does something better than most, to not say all, other options that I've seen on the market try to achieve that, with the one exception being the M4. The M4, I think, is not necessarily as good for retro, even though it's very close, but the M4 is also better for other things. The thing that's challenging with the M4 is not so much is it good or is it bad, it's the way that it will interface with your phone physically. The magnet MagSafe is a great solution, but the portrait mode is basically lost on this, so you're really gonna have to lean on the landscape orientation. It's just not gonna be as pleasant for retro because, of course, that 16:9 is probably overkill in most case scenarios, but it's also gonna be viable for other things, something that the Pocket Taco just doesn't do as well. If your goal is SNES, GBA, Nintendo, Sega Genesis, Neo Geo, potentially even some MAME and some light PlayStation 1 games, man, this is really, really good and easily to recommend, and it's also very inexpensive. It's up to 30 hours of battery life, so it's so easy to throw in your pockets, throw in a backpack for sure, throw in even like a duffel bag or like something super duper small. This is gonna fit just about anywhere. It weighs nothing, and you don't need to have a magnet to interface it. It's just, you just snap it on, easy peasy lemon squeezy. And that's what I love about this. This is probably the best don't even think about it kind of device that you can bring with you, because it's just gonna work for the kind of game that you know you'll be able to play with this. You're going on a flight, you have this, it weighs nothing, it doesn't really take the space of a controller. Maybe you don't have space for that. If you are interested, you have two ways that you can get one. Either the pre-order, which I'll put the GameSir links in the bottom on the description tab, or you can also pre-order one on Kickstarter. 35 on their website, 30 on the Kickstarter, and you have access to that beautiful purple, which I absolutely want. And that is it, guys. Let me know if you have any comments, any questions. Make sure to drop them in the comment box. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.